The morning light drifts softly through high mullioned windows, casting pale gold across the stone floor of a small, time-worn workshop. Dust motes float like drifting spirits in the still air, stirred only by the gentle pull of a breeze from the narrow door left slightly ajar. A potter, already at his wheel, hums low beneath his breath, an old melody learned from his mother while his hands guide clay into being. The scent of damp earth mixes with the sharper tang of wood smoke as the kiln warms gently behind him. Here, the hours are not measured by bells or clocks, but by the texture of the clay as it dries beneath his fingers, by the rise and fall of breath as the vessel takes shape. Tools lie scattered in quiet devotion, wooden ribs polished smooth by decades of use, a worn sponge, a fine metal needle resting in a curled linen cloth. Outside, the village stirs faintly with distant hoofbeats and a slow-moving cart, but inside, all is timeless hush. This is not a place of hurry, but of rhythm, the slow repetition of useful beauty. Each bowl he shapes holds the echo of the one before it, and yet each bears its own quiet soul. The potter's touch is a kind of prayer, offered not upward, but inward, into the stillness of practice. As the vessel is lifted, cradled, and set among others on a pine shelf, its smooth surface gleams softly in the morning light. There is a kind of silence here that does not feel empty, but full, of memory, of patient hands, of soft beginnings. And as the wheel slows to a gentle stop, the day opens like a page, steady and unhurried, ready to unfold. A gentle drizzle falls on the tiled roofs of the weaver's quarter, creating a soft percussion against wooden shutters and the curled leaves of a creeping vine. Inside a sun-warmed chamber, the loom stands like a solemn guardian of tradition, tall, broad, draped in threads the color of wheat and wool smoke. The weaver sits barefoot, her skirt spread like a puddle of linen around her, hands moving with unthinking grace across the shuttle's path. Each pass of the shuttle clicks softly, a calming rhythm like a lullaby to the old beams above. The warp and weft whisper secrets only the hands remember, born of childhood lessons and ancestral patience. On the windowsill, a small dish of berries sits next to a carved wooden calm, both waiting without urgency. The scent of warmed wool and dried lavender hovers in the quiet air. There is no rush here, only the steady unfolding of a story told not in words but in fiber. Outside, a boy walks with a bundle of firewood, the tap of his wooden soles faint on the cobbles. A neighbor's broom sweeps softly, steady as the tide. These are the sounds that hold the village together, not proclamations, but gestures, repeated through centuries like prayer. Inside, the weaver hums a tune with no beginning and no end, something she learned from the rhythm of the loom itself. She works not for fame or coin, but for warmth, for continuity, for beauty that lives in corners and cupboards and cradles. The fabric grows slowly, like ivy across a stone wall, each thread woven into the memory of those who came before. As the light shifts toward evening, golden and soft, she ties off the day's final length and smooths it gently with her palm. Outside, the rain softens into mist. Within, the silence is whole. The sun has not yet crested the hills, but already the air carries the earthy scent of damp stone and aged parchment. In a candlelit alcove of an abbey scriptorium, a monk sits bent in quiet focus, his quill scratching delicately upon vellum. His breath rises and falls in rhythm with the flickering light, casting long, steady shadows across the wooden writing desk. The air is thick with beeswax and ink, and in the silence, every movement is a prayer. He dips his quill again, careful not to spill. Each letter is shaped with reverence, not only for the text, but for the time it inhabits, a time where silence was its own kind of language. A feather lies beside him, trimmed just so. A damp cloth rests near a carved stone inkwell, and nearby, a heavy book lays open, spine cracked but treasured. Through the narrow windows, the faintest bird song trickles in, an early wren greeting the day. The abbey walls seem to breathe with the monk, as if time itself has slowed to meet his pace. The script he copies is not his own, but centuries old, preserved in strokes and flourishes only the trained hand can honor. Beyond the stone walls, the world begins to stir, the far cry of a shepherd's call, the soft clatter of a pail beside a well, but inside, all is timeless hush. The fingers are ink-stained, his spine curved in gentle labor, yet there is no complaint, only devotion. With each line he completes, the silence deepens, not in absence, but in fulfillment. As the sun finally breaks the horizon, a single beam graces his page, gilding the script in soft gold. And he writes on, steady and quiet, as the morning unfolds like a sacred scroll. The smell of fresh-cut wood mingles with the warmth of early sunlight, slanting in through open barn doors to catch in the swirling sawdust. A joiner stands at his bench, hands calloused but gentle, as he runs a plane across a long plank of oak. The sound it makes is soft, steady, a whispering scrape that speaks of care and repetition. Tools hang on the wall in tidy rows, chisels with worn handles, a mallet darkened by use, a square that belonged to his grandfather. Each carries its own quiet history, passed from hand to hand like a family blessing. He lifts a dowel, inspects its grain, then fits it into place, with the kind of precision that needs no words. The bench bears marks of years, a burn from a candle, ink-stained corners, grooves where countless projects began and ended. Through the wide windows, swallows dart and loop, their shadows flickering briefly over the walls. Somewhere outside, chickens murmur softly in the straw, and the low, rhythmic creak of a wheelbarrow being pushed tells of another simple labor beginning nearby. But in here, in this pocket of fragrant cedar and dust, time has thickened and slowed. He builds not with haste, but with memory, with stories embedded in joints and dovetails, in timber chosen not for show, but how it feels beneath the hand. A table leg, newly shaped, leans against the wall beside its twin, and a soft cloth waits to oil the wood, to coax the grain into life. As he works, his breathing syncs with the strokes, and the world narrows into wood, touch, and trust. In this workshop of softened edges and steady hours, the morning stretches long and generous, ready to be shaped. The hillside garden wakes slowly under a veil of early fog, the dewdrops clinging to violet petals like glass beads. Beneath the weathered arbor where ivy curls lazily, a woman kneels on a linen cloth, pruning thyme with a small iron blade. Her basket is half filled with lavender, sage, and chamomile, their scents mingling in the stillness like a forgotten lullaby. The garden is terraced with care, each level bordered by dry stone walls stacked by her grandfather's hands decades ago. Moss gathers at the base where rain runs down in slow ribbons, and small clay pots crowd the corners, cradling herbs just beginning to reach toward the morning light. She moves without hurry, fingers brushing soil from roots with tender reverence. Birds sing in low tones, wood pigeons and finches tucked into the hedges, and the sound of a distant bell carries faintly up from the chapel below. The wind is barely a breath, just enough to stir the hems of her sleeves and ruffle the leaves of the fig tree near the path. This is a place of quiet labor and soft reward, where patience is the true currency. With each sprig she collects, a memory blooms, of warming tea by the hearth, of her mother's voice telling stories as they pressed flowers in heavy books. A slug trails slowly across a stone, unnoticed and unharmed. The garden, though small, feels endless in its offerings. She pauses, looking over the valley, as the fog begins to lift in silvery strands, revealing the distant blue of the river far below. In this gentle light, even the weeds look beautiful. The basket rests beside her, fragrant and full. The day is beginning, but there is no rush, only the next quiet moment, and then the next. A slow fire crackles in the hearth, its glow painting the cobbled floor in drowsy amber. In the back room of a candlemaker's cottage, rows of newly dipped tappers hang from wooden beams, their waxy forms gleaming faintly in the firelight. The air is thick with the sweet scent of honey and melted beeswax, softened by hints of rosemary drying near the window. The candlemaker moves with quiet purpose, turning each wick to cool evenly. His apron is smudged with soft yellow, and a linen cloth rests over his shoulder, dappled with ash and wax. Outside, dusk falls slowly, its light slipping away like water through fingers. Inside, the world shrinks to warm flickers and the gentle rhythm of work done with care. The ladle dips again into the pot, the wax shimmering golden and alive. Each layer is added with thought, with patience, a ritual repeated 100 times without boredom. He lifts a candle and examines it in the hush. The surface is smooth, like a river stone polished by time. A book lies nearby, open to a page that's been reread so often that it has softened at the edges. There is no need for haste here. Each candle will be given, sold, lit for prayers or for quiet dinners, or simply burned on long winter nights where shadows lean close. In every taper, there is a measure of peace preserved, time slowed into light. As the last of the candles is hung, he sits by the fire, rubbing his hands with oil to loosen the wax from his skin. Outside, a fox passes silently beneath the window. Inside, silence reigns. The warmth holds him gently, like a story already known, waiting only to be told again. The first light of dawn steals softly across the lake's surface, unbroken and still. On the opposite bank, mist curls above the water like breath, and the silhouette of a slender boat emerges from the fog. In its belly, a cooper rows with easy strokes, heading toward the shore near his workshop, where staves and hoops wait in patient piles beside the door. His hands are damp from the oars, but he welcomes the chill. Another day of shaping, steaming, and binding the elements into something whole. The air smells of oak and ash, touched by the faint perfume of river reed and morning dew. As he ties the boat to its mooring, a heron lifts off from the shallows, wings slow and dignified, brushing the hush with soundless grace. Inside the workshop, warmth waits. A pot of barley porridge simmers on a small iron stove, and beside it, a chipped mug holds a blend of nettle and mint. Steam rises lazily. The cooper removes his wool cloak and lays it on a peg, then begins his work with a hum, low and melodic. Each stave is chosen not only for strength, but for sound, for the soft music of grain against grain as the barrel comes together. He uses tools that have names, the froe, the adze, the driver, and each leaves a different voice in the wood. The barrel grows like a circle of trust, held together by quiet skill and the ancient logic of shape. Outside, the fog lifts slowly, revealing sun on the rippling surface. The day lengthens, but the mood remains unchanged, a steady unfolding, full of purpose and peace. The cooper leans back for a moment, listening to the silence between birdsong, feeling the satisfaction of something made with care.